There have been rumblings about the Boston Red Sox potentially acquiring Alex Bregman this offseason, but there are several reasons why it could actually make a lot of sense.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And want to know the best part? It's free. So you really have no choice but to at least check it out because Locked On is your team every single day. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com? Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. Happy Friday. That is the biggest thing here. And welcome to the show. And what an absolute treat we have gotten a postseason baseball so far. Just some great, really competitive games. And I think everybody was surprised that the Astros went down the way that they did. I mean, I had a feeling the Tigers could win the series, but I didn't think that it was going to be a 2-game sweep. But it was really clear to me that the Astros just didn't want it as much. To me, it felt like the Tigers wanted it a lot more than they did. And they went out there and took care of business and were hungry. And that was what it was. And nobody's going to sit back and deny the level of greatness that we saw with that Astros team. And nobody's going to sit back and say it wasn't incredible, the run that they had. But what we can say is that that run is now over after 7 consecutive trips to the ALCS. It's kind of crazy. I mean, Astros fans don't know what to do with themselves now. They're used to watching their team play pretty late into October, and they haven't gotten to experience what it's like to be a fan like us Red Sox fans who have had to sit on the sideline and watch over the last few years. So definitely was a bit of a surprise. And the question now becomes with the Astros, what does their future look like now that this core has pretty much reached the end of what it can accomplish together? Is Alex Bregman staying? Is he going elsewhere? I'm talking about all of that on today's show, as well as a couple other players from playoff teams that got eliminated that are going to be free agents and if they could be a good fit for Boston. So that's all on today's show. And Alex Bregman's name has been tossed around a lot among Major League Baseball executives and people around the sport, just having a conversation about what his future looks like. He did tweet after the Astros got eliminated on Wednesday, "Thank you, Houston." And that could be interpreted a lot of different ways. He could have just been tweeting it because he just was showing appreciation now that their season ended for everything that they've accomplished in his time there. And just looking back on his tenure with them and realizing how much he really accomplished and just speaking generally, or he could have been saying that as in, "Thank you, Houston. It was a great run, but I'm moving on." So it's really hard to interpret what he actually meant by that, but he is going to be a free agent. So it's hard to really know how serious he is about reuniting with the Astros, if they are serious about re-signing him, if they're going to offer him a lot of money. I'm sure they'll at least try. I mean, he's one of their guys that was a core piece of that puzzle for both of those World Series runs that they had. So bringing him back would be big for them. So I'm sure they'll try, but the question is going to be, does he want to return? And it's definitely going to be a little weird not seeing him in an Astros uniform if he goes elsewhere. But Jose Altuve did urge the Astros postgame to re-sign him to keep the core together, but then that Twitter message came out. So it's really hard to interpret. But if he doesn't go back to Houston, like if they don't see him as being part of the future, if they saw this loss as a symbolization of the core having reached its mark together and it's time for them to think more about long term, then I don't see them being as interested in pursuing him. And one team that could be a fit if he doesn't re-sign with them is the Boston Red Sox. Yes, he's 30, so it wouldn't be a crazy long deal that they commit to him for, but they would have to offer multiple years in order for it to be enticing for him to come to Boston. And Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic actually floated this idea last month about the Red Sox being a potential candidate to sign him. And the fit at this point right now really does make perfect sense for the Red Sox. I mean, he hit really well at Fenway with a 1.240 OPS in 21 games. So every time the Red Sox would face him at Fenway Park, he was making good contact and finding a lot of success offensively. So that's a promising sign for what his bat could look like when he does come to Boston, if he were to be on the other side of it and be in a Red Sox uniform. Also, he could bring a World Series pedigree to the clubhouse, somebody who's so experienced in the playoffs and has spent many, many years getting really deep into October. And for a Red Sox team that still has a lot of young players who have yet to experience what October baseball is like, he could provide a lot of value in that area in terms of helping these guys to be relaxed under pressure and not let it impact their performance negatively when it's a nerve-wracking situation. So that alone is a big experience that he could bring to the table. Also, him being a third baseman, he could slot right into third base, and it would allow the Red Sox to move Devers into the designated hitter role, because if he needs to rest physically like he did this season, and who knows what's going to happen with his shoulder injury, if he's going to be able to recover and come back and be able to play fully to the same capacity, both in the field and at the plate. So if they move him into being a DH, it would allow for them to, for one, justify a lot more trading Yoshida, because if they want to move him, now would be the time to do it, because they have a plethora of outfield talent and he wasn't really playing in the outfield anyway. So if they want to try to dump his salary because they're only really paying for him to be a DH right now primarily, this could be the time to do that, package him in with a couple other solid players to get some return on pitching, and then slot Devers primarily into the DH role, and it would fill that need. And then Bregman could play third base, who is also a defensive upgrade from Devers at third. So that could make a lot of sense in that regard. He's also a ninth-year veteran who would give the Red Sox that coveted right-handed bat that the lineup lacked throughout the season, and especially if they don't bring back Tyler O'Neill, which this could also help them to justify not bringing him back, is they then have that right-handed bat who is a little bit more consistent than O'Neill, less strikeouts, doesn't hit as many home runs consistently as O'Neill does, but his batting average is usually consistently better and above average. And he could be somebody who could provide a lot of versatility at the plate, as opposed to O'Neill, and what he brought was the power, but not so much versatility. And it would create more room in the outfield for guys like Wilyer Abreu, Roman Anthony, Jaron Duran, and Cedar Rafaela, depending on what they want to do with him. Then they don't have to move any of those younger pieces if they don't bring back O'Neill. And then they just kind of keep Refsnyder around as that backup outfielder, like I talked about on yesterday's show. So that's another reason why it could be a fit for Boston bringing in Bregman. And not only the on-field stuff, but he also has several connections with the Red Sox. He was actually drafted by Boston in 2012, but then he decided to play for LSU, and his favorite player growing up was actually Dustin Pedroia. So he has been rooting for a Red Sox icon, really, somebody who just really portrayed what Red Sox baseball was all about. And especially since he was drafted by the team, he decided to play for LSU instead. But I'm sure he has a soft spot for the Red Sox because it means a lot to him because they ultimately were willing to give him a shot at that point. And also, Alex Cora knows him really well from their time spent in Houston together. So that's another helpful thing, is that there's that clubhouse familiarity there between Bregman and Cora, so that if they were to be in the same clubhouse again, they already have some of that chemistry and they've won a World Series together. So that's another fit. And also, he is close friends with Mark Wahlberg, who, as we know, is a huge Boston everything guy. So Wahlberg could assist in bringing Bregman to the Red Sox in order to help the Red Sox cause a little bit. He could insert himself and make Bregman feel welcome and at home and at ease right away, which could entice him to wanting to go to Boston. So all of this in the Red Sox potential pursuit of Bregman would depend, for one, on the Astros plan for him, as well as the direction Chief Baseball Officer Craig Breslow and the front office want to go in. So those things have to work. Are the Red Sox serious about wanting to sign him? Are they willing to pay him the money that he's going to require? That is the real question that we don't know, because the Red Sox front office continues to not be straight up with us. But in terms of if it would make sense, absolutely 100%. And he would definitely be a good step for the Red Sox to achieve their goal of playing postseason baseball again. He just kind of fits too perfectly into the puzzle with what the Red Sox are trying to achieve next season. So the question now becomes, are the Red Sox going to cough up the money and pay him? Because to me, he deserves that money, and he would fit right in with the Boston Red Sox if he were to come here from an on-field standpoint. And he could also be a good veteran leader that could provide experience in the clubhouse. But we'll see. Only time will tell on that. And coming up, I'm going to be talking about another pending free agent whose team just got eliminated from the playoffs, who could be a good fit for the Red Sox. For those of us who thrive on getting stuff done, including workouts, every minute counts. That's why you need Tonal, the smart strength training system that takes the guesswork out of working out so you can make sure you're making the most of every rep. When life gets busy, fitting in a workout can be stressful. With Tonal, you can get efficient workouts personalized just for you and are available with the amount of time you have. Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps get you stronger. Powered by AI, Tonal learns with every rep so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. Tonal learns from your movement and provides suggested weight recommendations for every move with detailed progress reports. They even create personalized program and workout suggestions or recommendations based on your individual goals. It's literally just like having a personal trainer at home with you, as Tonal will optimize every workout just for you. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your purchase with promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Tonal.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your purchase. That's Tonal.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off. As somebody who values staying in shape and being able to work out but doesn't always feel like going to the gym and wants to work out at home, Tonal has really come in handy for me, and it can for you too as well if that sounds like you. Happy Friday again, and welcome to Locked on Red Sox, where we are discussing pending free agents who were on playoff teams that just got eliminated. And while the Tigers went in and shocked the Astros and all of Astros Nation by going in and winning the first two games of the 3-game sweep, it was pretty remarkable to watch that happen. I mean, it was a best of 3 series. All you had to do was win 2. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I thought Houston would take either the first or second game and that it would for sure go to a third do or die game. But Tigers went in and took care of business, and you have to give them credit for that. And another team that got swept in their series was the Baltimore Orioles, a team that has not won a playoff game in years, cannot seem to figure things out in the postseason when it matters. And they'll go and have a great regular season, but then when the playoffs hit, they just cannot seem to figure it out. And in this case, it was their bats that couldn't figure it out. in that wild card series against the Royals, they scored 0 runs in the first game. So if you get shut out, that alone shows that you don't really deserve to be in the playoffs if you're going to allow yourselves to get shut out like that. And then in the second game, they only scored 1 run. So they scored 1 run in the entirety of the series, and it was on a solo home run in the second game. And that's really sad because you need to be able to produce offense if you want to go far in the playoffs. And guys like Gunnar Henderson, who just a year ago was rookie of the year and went off this year in the regular season, didn't get a single hit in the playoffs. And Adley Rutschman couldn't come through either. They need those talented guys to come through in order to do anything of value in the postseason. And it's tough for them because they made this big trade for Corbin Burnes last offseason, a true ace, because that's what they lacked in their puzzle last year. And that's what kept them from being a playoff team last year that went really far, was because they were missing an ace. I mean, they went to the playoffs last year, but they lost in the first round again. And it was the similar situation as it was this year. And not only did they lose in the first round last year too, but they got swept again. They just have not been able to win a single game, no less a playoff series. So something seriously went wrong there. And for the longest time, I felt like Corbin Burnes was going to re-sign with Baltimore. And I'm sure they'll try to re-sign him. I mean, they'd be kind of stupid not to. But the question is he going to want to go back there? Is he going to want to go back to a team that was great in the regular season, but then when he goes out there and pitches, he can't get run support in the postseason because it's either too big of a stage for these guys or they just forget everything from the regular season and they just can't handle it in the postseason? That becomes the question now. And I think if they had gone a little bit deeper in the playoffs, he might have been able to sit here and say, okay, well, we came up short, but at least we figured out how to be able to win in the playoffs. And if I'm Corbin Burnes now, I'm skeptical about if this team is ever going to be able to get over that hump with me on it. So I might be questioning if I want to go back there this offseason. So that's another possibility for the Red Sox. I mean, it's tough for the Orioles because he was such an integral part of that team this season. He joined the Orioles organization on February 1st when the club swung a blockbuster deal to land him from the Brewers. They parted with infielder Joey Ortiz and left-hander D.L. Hall, a pair of promising young players, but they brought in that true bona fide ace to lead the pitching staff. He was impressive as advertised for the Orioles this year, posted a 2.92 ERA and a 1.096 whip over 32 starts, racking up 181 strikeouts and 194 and a third innings. He was also lights out in the postseason, tossing 8+ innings of 1-run ball during an 84-pitch gem in Game 1 of the Wild Card Series. And that's exactly what I mean. Like, he looked fantastic. He just couldn't get any run support. And I'd be frustrated if that were me. He spent the first 6 years of his major league career with Milwaukee before going to Baltimore. And when asked if he could envision a reunion with the O's this offseason, he said, we'll see what happens. I haven't thought much about what's going on next. It's going to be a crazy offseason, but still just trying to digest what happened. It was an early exit to what we thought was going to be a long run. So he didn't really say much about it and wasn't really clear on what he was leaning towards in terms of if he does want to go back to Baltimore, but could be a really good fit for the Boston Red Sox, a right-handed, reliable starting pitcher who would be that true number one, no question ace that the Red Sox have been needing for a while now. Somebody who could go out there and pitch at the top of the Red Sox rotation and undoubtedly make them a more competitive team. Now, the question here becomes, are the Red Sox going to be willing to throw the money out there that is necessary to bring in somebody like Corbin Burnes? Because that's what we're all wondering here is, are the Red Sox willing to spend money on players? Are they willing to be aggressive and go out there and get the types of players that they need to make this team better? And that's what everybody's wondering here. And it's clear that Corbin Burnes would be a fit but he's also going to come with a price tag, especially because of that gem that he pitched in the postseason. If his start in the wild card series had been rough, then maybe his value goes down a little bit and a team doesn't necessarily want to take the chance on paying him that type of money that he wants because they would be worried that he wouldn't perform when they need him to perform. So in that regard, I can definitely understand that. And I can understand teams feeling that way and being hesitant if he were to not pitch well. But because he pitched so well and effectively, people know, okay, he still has it. He can be relied upon in the postseason. We are willing to give him the money he's going to ask for because we want him on this team. He will be in high demand. Like, this isn't going to be some situation where he just walks into the Red Sox hands. Like, this is tough. Lots of teams are going to be vying for his services. And if the Red Sox aren't aggressive in their pursuit of him, then they're simply just not going to get him. And that's just how these things work. Like, you have to be one of those teams that's willing to get into a bidding war and up the price that you're willing to offer if you want to get a pitcher of that caliber. And there's no question in the world that the Red Sox need a pitcher of that caliber. And for a while, I wasn't even really considering Corbin Burnes seriously because I thought it was pretty much a given that he'd be returning to Baltimore. But at this point, it's the furthest thing from a given that he'd be going back there because since they couldn't get over that hump again in the playoffs, he'd be taking a risk if he goes back there and saying, okay, I still believe in this team. You know, we've gotten our feet wet a couple times. Now let's get over that hump. But if he considers this season with Baltimore and also the fact that last year they weren't able to get over that hump, also, you have to wonder, okay, is this just them? Like, are they incapable of performing when it matters? In which case, then it's out of his control personally. He could have the best start in the entire world and it wouldn't matter because at the end of the day, the Orioles as a team cannot perform. So lots of questions surrounding Corbin Burnes and whether he's somebody that the Red Sox are going to be willing to want to invest in the offseason. Are they going to be willing to throw the money out there that he'd be looking for? Is he somebody that the Red Sox at least even have on their radar? All of that we're going to be finding out as the offseason progresses, but it makes too much sense because the Red Sox do need that bona fide ace at the top of that rotation. And Burnes showed that he is deserving of being that person and is capable of being that person, even in the postseason when it really matters and he can lock in. So I'd like to see the Red Sox pursue something and not shy away from offering him the type of money that he's really looking for, but nobody can make that decision fully except for the Red Sox. So hopefully they do it. But coming up, there's another pitcher who might not be as expensive that the Red Sox maybe could vie for this offseason. So I'm going to be talking about that next. This episode of Locked On Red Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. Explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. With hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival's city during the postseason. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball competition's stadium cuisine. Luckily on Booking.com, you can find the stadium stay that's just right for you. With Booking.com's wide variety of choices across the U.S., you can go incognito to all your baseball rivals' cities. I love traveling, and my fiance and I are trying to go to every major league ballpark one day. So we've been heavily utilizing Booking.com to book hotel stays at all of these places so that we can get discounts on places and be able to filter it out to the types of places that are important to us based on what our criteria is for the type of place we want to stay. And it's been super helpful and I love it. So if you do a lot of traveling like me, definitely check out Booking.com. The right stay truly can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. I promise you this will change your life when traveling. I know from firsthand experience. What's going to happen this offseason? What players are going to stay on the teams they are currently on? What players are going to go elsewhere? With a wide variety of talented free agents in this upcoming class, it's up to the Red Sox to really invest and take the time to acquire some of these players. They cannot let all these guys slip through the cracks. And there are some guys who make a lot of sense for Boston, and Max Fried is one of those players. Now, my worry with him is that he is getting up there in age, and he's not a number one starter for everybody at this point in his career, but he would be for the Red Sox because they don't have a number one right now, and he would be the best starter that team has. But the way that he and the Braves lost against the Padres in the wild card round was definitely heartbreaking. He was on the mound, and it just wasn't how he or anybody associated with the Braves anticipated that he would fare during what possibly could have been his final start for the organization. He experienced both physical and emotional pain as he completed only 2 innings in the Braves season-ending 5-4 loss to the Padres in Game 2 of the wild card series on Wednesday night. The Fernando Tatis Jr. liner he took off his backside in the first inning led to the frustration that he felt during San Diego's 5-run second inning. So that was definitely unfortunate. They broke out for one big inning and couldn't score the rest of the game, but the Braves just could not come back enough and fell just short. And it's really sad for him. I mean, he said it's frustrating knowing that I was the one to take the ball on the last day and put us in the hole, to not be able to at least give us a shot for tomorrow. So now there is no more tomorrow for the Braves, but the question is, does he still have a future in Atlanta? He is the club's second longest tenured player, debuting 7 days after Ozzie Albies did in August 2017. But the free agent market and a significant payday now await him. He said wearing the Braves uniform means everything. It's the organization that traded for me and gave me the opportunity to come to the big leagues and be an established big league player. I obviously don't know what's going to happen, but I have absolutely loved every minute of it and hope to have many more. He clearly wants to stay in Atlanta, but the team has to also be in agreement that they want to keep him. And one thing I do wonder is if the Braves, especially after his postseason performance, feel like he's done his time with them and there's nothing more they could really get out of him, in which case then they will decide that it doesn't make sense for them to re-sign him. And I know that his heart might be a little bit broken if he goes elsewhere, because obviously Atlanta hits home to him and they're just a really meaningful place for him. But if he doesn't go back to Atlanta, who could be a fit for him? You know what I'm going to say. The Boston Red Sox, who are in need of starters. I mean, if they sign Fried, he would, yes, be the best starter that the Red Sox have, but I still worry about consistency, whether he would be able to be a guy who could be a consistent number one starter. That would be the only question mark I have. I feel like if they were to sign Fried, they almost should sign somebody else also who is even more of a defined number one, especially because of that performance in the postseason. Yes, he was hurting, so him being in pain had a factor in it, but also, is that something that we should expect moving forward, is for him to be injured or not be able to pitch as effectively anymore because he doesn't necessarily have the means anymore to be able to pitch as effectively, in which case then if the Red Sox are relying on him to be their number one starter, then they're kind of back at square one if that doesn't work out. So I almost feel like Fried would be a little bit more of a risky signing if they were to make him their number one starter. I just feel like it's really not enough for me to feel confident in the starting rotation if he was the one signing that they brought in, especially because he had produced a 6.08 ERA over his past 8 postseason starts, going back to the beginning of the 2021 playoffs, and he hasn't completed 5 innings in any of his past 3 playoff starts. So the postseason has not been kind for him, and everything that went down on Wednesday night just completely added to his frustration. A late season virus adversely affected his start against the Phillies in the 2022 NLDS, and a finger blister added to his challenge during last year's disappointing start against Philadelphia in the 2023 NLDS. But Travis d'Arnaud, Braves catcher, said, I hope he's back. I really do. He's given his heart and soul to this organization. And I don't doubt that. I think from an attitude perspective, he's somebody who's fantastic to have around, somebody who provides a lot of hard work, motivation, and positivity to the clubhouse, somebody who could really show guys, hey, this is what it means to work your butt off and continue to grind even through the hard times, and continue to just go out there and do what you can do to get the job done, to put your team in the best spot to succeed. And I don't doubt that he would provide any of that, but his postseason history and his lack of success in the playoffs definitely makes me a little bit nervous in regards to the Red Sox, especially because that's what they were trying to do, is get back to being a team that can make a deep playoff run. And if you're looking to make a deep playoff run, then you want to have guys on the team who are reliable in the postseason. And so that goes back to me again saying with Max Fried, if they do sign him and bring him in, they should treat that more like he's a number 2 starter, and also bring in somebody else who's more of a bona fide number 1 to pitch ahead of him in the rotation, because that way then they're covering all their bases, because then they can kind of replace somebody in the rotation who's a little bit weaker, maybe Cutter Crawford, for example, with Max Fried, who definitely would be able to produce better numbers there in the regular season. But then if you're relying on him in the postseason, you're not relying on him to throw out there in game 1 of a playoff series, because you have somebody else who hasn't struggled nearly as much that would take on that role. So again, I don't dislike the idea of the Red Sox signing Fried. I think it could make sense for a lot of reasons, but if they do sign him, I would like them to also bring in another starter who can actually fit into that number 1 spot, instead of just assuming that they can make Corbin Burnes that guy. So we'll see what happens, but lots of players hitting free agency, especially from these teams that just got eliminated in the wild card round of the postseason. We are in for an absolute treat for the rest of the playoffs, and I am so excited to see all of the action. And while you're enjoying the playoffs, you can also enjoy Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, who will give you the latest on all things going on across the league. So if you want to stay up to date with what's going on with the playoff teams and the offseason, make sure you check him out wherever you listen to podcasts right after this. As always, keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I will catch you on the flip side.